Alrighty everyone, welcome back. We are now inching closer toward the middle of April of 2025, and given that With Love Meghan is still considered a ratings disaster across the board over at Netflix based on how it was viewed and perceived not just by the public but also in the mainstream media, we know that a lot of those over at Netflix are heavily trying to defend this thing. They are trying to go into damage control as much as possible, including Meghan Markle herself about this show. Now, we already know that a lot of that is something to do with the fact that Meghan Markle wants to actually get her contract renewed with Netflix. That's why she's engaging in damage control. That's exactly why she keeps talking and striking back at the critics and really defending herself at all costs. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. So, one thing about Meghan Markle is that we already know that she's very much narcissistic. In fact, she is a narcissist, very self-absorbed, greedy, and will always lie to the general public no matter what the case is. And this is another case because we know that this series already has a part 2 coming out by this fall. They are disguising that as a season 2, so to speak. They like to label it as a season 2 to make the show come across as a more, hit show than it really is. But what's interesting about all of this has a lot more to do with Meghan Markle and her recent claims about what's really going on between herself, the critics, the story, everything else related to Netflix, and it gets quite out of control, really. Because when you look at the overall grand scheme of things, we already know that Netflix CEO Greg Peters, he's just done with Meghan Markle. He is trying to just knock some sense into the board of directors over there that it's time to move on. It's time to move on to something else. Now, with the Meghan Markle backlash worsening, the more she engages in damage control over the ratings disaster that is With Love Meghan from Netflix, one surprising development that is now active involves how Meghan strikes back at the critics and the general public yet again and said some of the most absurd things possible. Now, Markle delivered the following. I don't know what everyone else is talking about right now when they like to criticize something that stars people like me, Mindy, and so many other talented people, claiming that our show is a failure. I can assure everyone that our series is the top series on Netflix. We really are right up there with number 1 because of how many we inspired out there to take charge in the household. I think the critics got it wrong. They got it very wrong when falling into the lies and the politically driven stories that our show did not meet expectations. We were successful with our first season, and this is exactly why we renewed it for a second one. So I would like the critics to explain to me how does that happen when you have a series that doesn't meet expectations and is a supposed ratings mishap. I would definitely say also that it can grow very tiresome to keep hearing such claims that I am this inauthentic person on camera. Well, don't let anyone else tell you out there or let you believe that, because when you watch what we created, up to 60% of the series that we shot were off script and improvised. And I think that's why these stories feel so real to everyone and why it connects to everybody that watched it. You don't just do that on accident. It takes a special kind of actress like myself to harness that energy. And I understand what that going on. I'm as authentic as can be. I didn't need guidance on how to prepare the food in the show. All the food was handpicked and cooked by me, both on camera and off camera. So guys, let me just stop here before I move on what Meghan Markle is just claiming again. She goes on to say that 60% of the show was off script, that it was improvised. That was one major big fat lie right there. In fact, most of the series was all scripted. Very, very little was improvised. So that's lie number 1. Lie number 2, it is not a successful ratings, for a show like that. It is not the top series on Netflix. It's nowhere near it, actually. When you look at the overall ratings for the show, it really fell flat, and it fell flat bad. That's exactly why they're disguising part 2 as a season 2, and that's another lie, by the way. The fact that she says that we're moving on because we renewed a second season. We renewed it for a second one, she says. It's not a season 2 because they shot all 16 episodes at once. They just divided them up and called it a season 2. That's all they did. Nothing was technically renewed in the traditional sense. Yes, they are shooting some additional footage to shoehorn in some additional cameos by this June, but that's really about it. Now, she goes on to move further. Our show is a ratings success, so I don't know why there are so many people that fall for the same narrative, that our show did not meet expectations. I think it tells everyone exactly how flawed out there that they are, that want to ruin the fun for others. I also think it's very important to set the record straight that we did hold some creative differences over this series. I really didn't get the freedom to fully express myself in the show, and dealing with that limit was a struggle. You see, in this industry, I think that needs change. Women should be allowed to express themselves to their fullest. I am real as can be in the show. What you see is what you get. Again, there she goes about saying how she's so real and authentic in this show and how she's just not a phony or fake person. Again, she is really just trying to go into damage control. She is trying to really, quite frankly, defend her so-called image that nobody really buys. And that's exactly why even her overall, stance against the critics, even that sounds phony. Even that sounds very fake and forced, to the point that it's just like, you know what, Netflix, I think it's just time that you gotta just, wipe off everything on your hands and move on. It's over, alright? So if they really wanted to, they could cancel this supposed second season. I like to call it season 1.5. That's what I generally like to call it. But it is what it is. Now, she goes on to conclude, this is where it gets interesting, by the way. She goes, more than half of our story was all improvised, so it's the real Meghan Markle in there. It's the real me and how I am in my everyday life. This is why I think the constant criticism just needs to stop. I think it just shows the ongoing issues with sexism, misogyny, and bigotry, both in the US and around the world. It's a very difficult obstacle to get that for sure, and it's an obstacle that needs to be closed for good. You work better that way. So, again, she keeps going on about sexism, misogyny, bigotry. Those are her 3 favorite words. Have you guys realized that? I mean, almost every argument that Meghan Markle has, or anything that she's promoting, or any kind of debate that she has, this, more often than not, always pops up. And it's the same copy and paste nonsense. Nobody buys it. She's overused those words so much that they really have no meaning anymore in her sentences. But again, this series, we already know that yes, it was a ratings disaster. Yes, it was something that was very much perceived as Meghan Markle acting very phony, to the point that it was in the mainstream media for 2 whole weeks. That's how bad it was. And that's really, I think, the top moment that Netflix realized that they really could not escape the bad press. They could not escape the ratings just declining over and over. And again, Meghan Markle is going to defend this series like no tomorrow, because look, we know that they're trying to force this new season, this second part, that's going to have politicians in it, it's going to have celebrities in it, it's going to have, personalities in general shoehorned into this thing. We already know that they actually did get Gavin Newsom to agree to come on the show. Even Kamala Harris is thrilled to come on for one short cameo. And that, I think, is going to be a major mistake. I think Netflix, or, Greg Peters, the CEO, really has to call for that to be called off and just end it there. Don't have politicians on the show cooking with Meghan Markle in the kitchen. It's going to be beyond terrible, but it will be fun to watch just to criticize something like that, to see how absurd Netflix is willing to go to actually go in the wrong direction. But overall, I would like to hear what everyone has to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.